Hello again, everybody. It's David Clouter and Andrew Roberts here for part 5 of the A to Z of property strategies. Now, David, we're bumbling along through the B's and we're about to carry on. But before we do, we've had an email in and it says we've missed a strategy out on the A's.
No.
Allotments.
Now,
Do you want to talk to us about allotments?
Yeah, I don't know the first end of a pitchfork from the other, but I do know that if you're land banking, in other words, if you've got some land that you put to one side, you're waiting for planning, or maybe just leaving it 10 years because you know that a big bypass is coming past there or something like this. I've done this in the past. What do you do with it in the meantime? Not necessarily to turn a fast buck, but to sort of stop it turning into an eyesore full of rats and who knows what. One way that I've used in the past is by turning it over to allotment space. And in fact, on one of mine, which I'm just unturning now, I had a friend keep bees, which was a fabulous, a good thing, giving back to the planet a bit, and keeping the land cultivated and cared for.
Very nice. And I'll have a pot of honey at the end of this season, please.
Absolutely. And I think that's about all we need to say about allotments. For any more, I'm sure Alan Titchmarsh will help with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So moving on, what else have we got today to share with our viewers?
Well, there's another A that I'd like to touch on because I thought of one as well in the meantime. And by the way, we're going to just later on show why that big yellow thing is there, because that begins with B, but not yet. Apart hotels. And this is a big deal. It's not as new as we might think, because my old mentor, who I refer to every now and again, used to have a thing that he used to call home away from home. He was doing that in the mid-1960s. I think somebody else is using the expression again now, as far as I know. But the idea is that people travelling around and in the sort of workplace that we have now, it's not normal really to sit at a desk in one city for 30 years, just stamping the bit of paper and moving it from that side of the desk to that. People don't do that anymore. And so we travel around. Wouldn't it be great to hit the ground running, to arrive somewhere and you're good to go? You don't have to worry about the laundrette or the kitchen cutlery and the thing and everything. It's all there. You have the serviced element of the hotel combined with the homeliness of an apartment.
So an apart hotel, effectively.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
And up my way, they're building some now. It's a global trend, and quite a few in the planning stage, including a few that are going to be a few meters away from my house. So we'll do a video with when they're finished. But now at the moment, they're just a piece of tarmac.
And it's obviously quite different to serviced accommodation, because these are apartment hotels. I've stayed across America, and in America, apart hotels are a very big thing over there.
Yeah, and these things are purpose built, which means that they're better designed than if you just had an apartment there, an apartment there. And as the operator, it's much better, because as you're servicing these, all you've got to do is go across the corridor and down, and not waste half an hour going around the city in a truck.
Superb. Well, we're in part 5. We were doing B's, and behind us we've got what's that thing?
A bandit board. That's not something that Butch Cassidy and Sundance used to ride around with on their horses, as far as I know. But it's to do with promoting your services as to the public in a cost-effective and very visual manner. I noticed there it's like fluorescent yellow or something. So this is something, as you're driving down the road, you're going to see that, aren't you, really? And if that was on a lamppost in my street, what's the first thing I would do? I'd pick up the phone and give this guy a bell and say, look, can we come to a deal?
And they work, because I use them quite extensively, have done for a number of years, and they're really good at getting people to phone you.
But it's interesting now that we're in this online domain where everybody sees stuff on Facebook or YouTube and other platforms that are available, and yet the sort of, you're driving along in the car or walking the dog and you see one of these, and in moments like that, you're hopefully not going to be doing some digital stuff, because it's unlawful in the sense of the driving, and with the dog, you get dog stuff all over your shoes, so you just don't want to be doing it. So this is eye-catching, and it works.
It does. It's brilliant. Now, this one hasn't actually got a phone number on, but I'd recommend you put a phone number on, as well as a web address, which we've got at the bottom there. But that's an example of what a bandit board is. And they are highly successful at driving numbers. I can share with you quite a number of people who've been very, very successful on these. They are highly visible.
Now, another B that I've got highlighted here is Brexit. We haven't mentioned the B word yet, have we at all? With all its implications and repercussions and that kind of thing. But
We're going political.
at the time, no, absolutely not. We're talking opportunities and this kind of thing. And it doesn't matter which way we voted and what happened in Parliament and all that kind of thing. It does matter a bit what happened in Parliament because the Parliament of Britain got a bit gridlocked, didn't it, really? And this is something that investors don't like, which it doesn't matter which side of the divide you're on. When Parliament is unable to pass laws and to plan, this is a very difficult time for investors. So for better or for worse, the country has now moved in one particular direction. And all it means in the venue where we are at the moment, suddenly we found that all the conference rooms are full and there's people out there having lunch and this kind of thing, because business has moved on. It's sort of business as usual insofar as it can be. And so that's the takeaway in a sense there, that political stability is good for business. That's it, no more, no less.
Totally. And I think the thing I would observe and add to that is, to me, when Boris made his speech after he'd won his election, every entrepreneur out there went, wow. It fired everybody up to go out and do business and do deals. Property sector, trading sectors, whatever sector you were in, it galvanised people and fired them up. And I think Brexit has been a positive thing, albeit that short term there's been a little bit of turbulence, but I think it's been a positive thing.
I mean, further down the line, yes, people will now be able to start making good 5-year plans and this kind of thing again. And for people to be on tenterhooks, that was the bad thing, I think.
Totally.
Totally. You know. And then we did...
Well, I think we've got banks on our list as well.
We've got banks on it. It's quite interesting, isn't it, to understand how the banking system works, because that will reflect on the way we do things as investors. So, for example, I'll give you an example of some friends that I know in America, who are the biggest home builders in Texas, y'all, and they're very nice folks. They leveraged, if you like, the situation to their advantage. Obviously, when you are starting out in business, you're going to need to do some kind of borrowing because you've got to muscle up a lot of resources, and that costs money, and it's more than you're going to get in your pocket money. What these guys found is further down the line, and they have a great sort of cash flowing business, which they are developers. They're doing new housing starts. I think they start 3 new builds a day, which is kind of staggering by UK standards, and they buy huge pieces of land that last them 2 years. So you could just imagine you need binoculars to see from one side of your building site to the other. But because they were cash flowing so well, they decided to deleverage, and so they paid down all their loans within the first few years of operation, and they were just running on cash flow. Now, you may remember, you're a bit too young to remember 2007, aren't you? But there was a bit of turbulence in the old banking sector then, which got so bad that interbank lending even froze. The banks weren't lending to each other. And to balance the books a bit, because some stuff had gone on that was a bit foolish, they started calling in loans from businesses that were perfectly basically sound. And in the case of these friends of mine, all their competitors got closed down by the banks because they needed to balance the books. For those guys, because they weren't indebted in any way, they were able to carry on. The demand was still there from clients, hence everybody came to them, and now they're almost an unstoppable force, I suppose, with about 200 employees.
I think that's brilliant. That's a really good strategy, and it did happen over here in the UK as well at that 2007-8, where those who were overgeared hit the buffers. Quite a few lost their portfolios, but that gave opportunities for those who were low geared to take advantage.
Absolutely. Here in the UK, for example, with Section 24, the tax changes that came in for people who own properties in their own name, those who earn their properties very low geared or unencumbered, I mean, 55% is probably the new 75% in terms of all that and profitability. So again, there are times when you need to be high geared, particularly when you're a young Turk starting out on the journey, but there are times when you need to sort of quieten down a bit when you get to my age. You've got a long way to go before you get to my age, Andrew, but you know,
thank you.
later down the road, you know, there is a rationale for reducing the gearing a bit.
I love doing these interviews with you, David, because you make me feel so young.
But you are.
Thank you. Well, another strategy on banks is the banks themselves are actually in a situation of turmoil. they're going through a period of stress testing, disaster recovery testing for the banks. Now, what that's meaning is, because of things like the Basel funding formula, they're having to actually look at their own real estate and sell off their own real estate.
Can I stop you at that point? Because not being a clever and sophisticated fellow as yourself, can you explain, please, to me in simple words that I can understand, the Basel funding formula?
Right, okay. Taking it back to very simple levels, in 2007-8, the banks ran out of cash. Northern Rock, Alliance and Leicester, and others all went to the wall. They went to the wall because they didn't have sufficient reserves, and customers were turning up at their door, knocking and saying, please give me my cash back, which meant they ran out of cash because every institution was asking each other for their cash back, and private investors were asking for their cash back. Now, what happened is the global regulators effectively said banks need to carry a certain amount of reserves on their balance sheet, which was going to be a lot more than they used to carry. And they came up with a formula which they termed the Basel funding formula. And in very simple terms, if somebody's got a high loan to value, they need to keep more reserves on their balance sheet. So if you've got a 95, 100% mortgage, then they need to keep £1.25 in reserves on their balance sheet. If you've got a 75% loan to value, they'd only need to keep, illustratively, £1. If you've got a 50% loan to value, they'd only need to keep 50p on the balance sheet. So it basically meant they could lend more if the loan to values were lower. Conversely, if a loan was in arrears, i.e. you owed them more money on the mortgage because you'd not been keeping up your instalments, then what they would say is you need to keep £2 on the balance sheet for every pound of loan to cater for those arrears. And every so often, every year or two, the banks are stress tested against this formula. Right. So
coming back to what you were saying earlier then, sorry for interrupting.
And that therefore drives the need to actually sell their own real estate, because banking is going digital. We all have got apps on our phones, we're all doing online banking, so we're going into the branches less. So there's less justification to keep the real estate. Therefore, they are selling off the real estate, and us as investors have opportunities to repurpose them from what they were used to something new.
Excellent, excellent. So with all these things, as one sector or area gets a bit stressed, there are opportunities, and those who have their finger on the pulse, there's mine, are able to sort of pick up on these things and sort of move forward.
So
now,
what do we have then after that? Because I took you on a slight deviation to your B for banking and gave you a second banking.
It was absolutely terrific. We've got broken chain. Have you ever had a broken chain when you're towing somebody's car out of a muddy field, snap, and then the car sinks deeper and deeper into the mud? Well, this is a slightly different thing. This is chains in the sense of estate agents, and it's quite common for some guy with I was going to say a £20,000 flat, but they don't sort of exist anymore. But I don't know, a £150,000 flat or something, and and then he's got to sell it to the guy with the £300,000 house, and then there's a £1.5 million house sitting up here, and suddenly the buyer of the £20,000 or £100,000 flat pulls out, and the whole chain collapses. Which is why it's great when you're when you're, for example, a buyer. You say to the estate agent, and it's chain free. I don't need my purchase of your property is not dependent on another one. What happens though when a chain breaks? Who will be the chain buster, and how does that mechanism work?
Well, you've obviously got here an opportunity for an investor to stand in and fix that broken link.
Absolutely. So I will regularly call up the estate agents in my network, and I say that I'm going to tell you a little secret here. The terminology is: have you got anything? Have you got anything that's fallen out of bed recently? And that's the terminology that we use with the agents, and then they'll point you in the direction of these things, and obviously you'll be able to make a much lower offer than the original sale price was, and everybody's kind of happy. Sometimes the guy at the top might chip in a bit, sometimes the guy at the top will buy the one at the bottom, and that sort of happens as well. But when that goes wrong, the estate agent is facing losing 5 or 6 commissions, so this is a real big hit.
It's a deal breaker for him.
So he's going to do everything possible to try and help you to repair that chain, and you're going to be able to buy a bargain property. And it's not only just a win-win for you and for the agent, it's a win-win for all the people in that chain. So that's a big
Absolutely.
win-win when you can do that.
And when you look at it from the agent's perspective, you've always got to look at what's in it for the other side. The agent is predominantly paid on commission. So if he's earning the bulk of his money from commissions, you've got to help him to keep the cash in his pocket, and you will be his best friend.
Now, I can't remember, because it was a week ago that we did the last one, but did we discuss brown envelopes?
Bruce Grubler? No.
So, right, well, you will find, as you circumnavigate the wonderful and integral and beautiful, marvellous property world full of saints and virtuous folk, that there will occasionally be people who ask you to slip them a brown envelope with some used fivers inside in order to facilitate some kind of deal. And my advice, I know,
That's
when
illegal.
that happens, well, that's exactly so. So my advice when that happens is, A, walk away, and B, have nothing whatsoever to do with them ever again. But, you know, it's just a little thing. You know, it has occurred to me in the past. Don't go there, don't, you know, and on both sides of the fence, not only sort of dodgy people offering you deals, but kind of people in positions of authority who say, we've noticed that not many of your planning applications have gone through or something. Dare I say it, you know, this could be facilitated. Don't do it. Don't go there. Have nothing to do with it. Stay integral. Keep your integrity. Maybe lose the occasional deal, but the ones that come your way will more than make up for it.
Well, I was going to say, I often have seen on the news people dressed as Arabs meeting in hotel rooms doing undercover operations
That's
to
it.
expose, and you don't want to be that person.
You don't want to be, you don't mind being the person who's exposing it for the news of the world. You know, that's all right if you're the reporter, but you certainly don't want to be the patsy on the other end.
Totally
Continuing
not.
with
Go
brown, I know something else that's brown,
Oh dear.
and that is...
Let's stop there.
Oh, Andrew, you kill me sometimes.
Sorry.
A brownfield site. I don't know what you would think of.
That's a relief.
Now, land in a country like England, which is bounded by sea all around, although it wasn't in the Ice Age, it's at a premium. And as we build ever outwards, it's very interesting how towns sort of join up. And when you look at old maps of London from 150 years ago, there was the village of Finchley or something, and a long country lane taking you to the next bit. It's all gone. And so then, as land becomes more and more scarce, it becomes more and more cost effective to have a look at the old garage or something, which is obviously was all polluted. There's all sorts of chemicals and things in the ground and this kind of thing. But that site's there. It's an eyesore. It's been sitting there for 15, 20 years or whatever. So there is opportunity to come in there and do something. And nowadays, our technologies for cleaning this sort of land are very advanced. We also have ways of sort of tanking foundations. I don't know what the technical term for it is, but I had a case recently where we had to do that to cover the foundations with sort of gubbins so that nothing can seep into the sort of house. And it's great to bring back decayed areas into public use again. And you're doing a service to the community because you're stopping these sort of urban wastelands.
Well, it's not just urban wastelands. I mean, if we looked at, say, at London, very frequently you see developers redeveloping areas of London, which that is brown field, although it doesn't look like a field, and it certainly doesn't look brown. But the purpose of taking down a building and repurposing with a new building or rejuvenating the building itself is what we're referring to here.
And it's a sort of property cycles thing as well, because when the economy's in overheat, then this happens a lot more. I travel around an awful lot on trains because they're a great way to... You can actually work while travelling. You don't have to worry about squishing any cats on the way and this sort of thing, which is terrific. I love cats.
I hope don't squash any.
I know, and going through Finsbury Park, which is something you do on the way from Cambridge, that's where I live, isn't it, to King's Cross at the other end, there was this terribly horrible building next to Finsbury Park Station, which was there probably since the 1980s, and suddenly it's gone and there's something gleamy and shiny there, and it's great. It can uplift a whole area because, you know, one horrible property can bring it down.
It certainly can. David, I hate to tell you, we've been talking for 20 minutes and we've reached the end of today's show.
My goodness, it didn't seem like it even 19 and a half from where I'm sitting, but isn't it extraordinary? So you know what that means? I've got my day job to do now, so it'll be a while before we do the next one, because I have to walk around the town with this, you see, and I get 10p an hour and a bonus of 50p if anybody signs up, so I'm off.
Well, for now, thank you very much for staying tuned. We look forward to welcoming you next time when we might have some more bees or we might be on seas. Tune in soon. If you like what we've been doing today, please put some comments below and tell us. If we've missed out an A or a B, please tell us again. And hit the like button, subscribe, and the bell icon if you want to be told when number 6 video is launched. Great to see you today. See you soon.
Thank you.